Coming up,
I took a bullet for democracy.
Better buckle your seatbelts.
he's the master of mouthing off,
It's going to get ruthless and dirty.
the big shot of bluster.
Oh, give me a break.
Liar.
Rapist. Is she Indian or is she black?
Is he a bully?
Yes.
But has Donald Trump now gone too far?
Donald said he doesn't recognize you, let him die, and move to Florida.
That's next on 60 Minutes. If political ruthlessness and cunning were Olympic events, Donald Trump would surely be glistening in gold. Such is his will to regain the world's top job, he's become even more proficient at belittling and slandering anyone who stands in his way. This time around, Trump's campaign for presidency is setting records for spitefulness. And with 11 weeks still until polling day, stand by for plenty more vitriol. Tonight, though, a counterattack from an unexpected quarter, a member of his own family. Fred Trump has released a damning memoir which reveals his uncle Donald is capable of a whole new level of cruelty and nastiness.
She's a horror show. She'll destroy our country.
Lowlife. She's a lowlife.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
When Mexico sends its people, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Love him or despise him, Donald Trump in full rant is an imposing and unforgettable sight.
I only want to be a dictator for one day.
A politician whose tongue lashings are legendary. The former president thrives on weaponising his words to eviscerate his opponents.
Oh, give me a break. She can't do an interview. She's barely competent. Is she Indian or is she black?
And if his aim is sometimes more scattergun than sharpshooter, well, he just doesn't care.
Last week, I took a bullet for democracy.
But others do.
He is a tough guy. He absolutely wants his own way.
Is he a bully?
Yes.
Few know the real Donald Trump better than Fred Trump. For most of his life, he's had a privileged seat to watch the very best and appalling worst of his famous uncle.
I think he's got the biggest ego of anyone around. That's his brand. He can't lose again. He has to be the winner, whatever it takes.
Win at all costs.
Win at all costs.
Business here, William. You are all
As a Trump, Fred has nothing to gain by speaking publicly. But as a father, he knows he can't stay quiet any longer. He's speaking out of love for his severely disabled 25-year-old son. William Trump doesn't understand the fuss, but he's the reason his father warns Donald Trump should not be given the keys to the White House again. Tell me about your son, William.
He just exudes happiness. People fall madly in love with him right away. He's incredibly courageous. But William is one of millions of people with disabilities. So many families are struggling financially to take care of their family members. And that's something in this country we really need to change.
William was born with epilepsy and suffers devastating seizures. He's inspired Fred and his wife Lisa to advocate for all Americans with disabilities to get more affordable and efficient care. And when they had access to the White House, Fred hoped his presidential relative would help. The response he received was staggering. In 2020, you went to the Oval Office to ask your uncle, the president, for support as you were advocating for people with disabilities. How did that go?
He was very interested in what we had to say. When the meeting dispersed, I was called back in and I was greeted by Donald's familiar, "Hey pal, how's it going?" And I thanked him for sitting with us for 45 minutes. And he said, those people, the costs, they should just die. I'm just happy that none of the people in that office were there to hear that directly.
Those people, including your son.
Yes.
It's extraordinarily cruel, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. I don't know how anyone can muster up that kind of thought process and verbalize it.
Hillary Clinton, she's a world-class liar.
When it comes to verbalising shocking, even offensive thoughts, Donald Trump seems to have no filter, especially with the less well-off. Back in 2015, he openly mocked a disabled reporter.
You got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Oh, maybe that's what I said.
And as president, after this public embrace for the cameras, he reportedly told his staff that nobody wants to see wounded veterans. It's very odd behaviour. I mean, where do you think that comes from? Is it that he doesn't see value in people that he perceives to be vulnerable or perhaps beneath him?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. He doesn't have empathy.
Is he capable of showing empathy?
Not that I have seen. He'll ask about William, sometimes, how's he doing? And one time when Lisa and I went to visit him in his office, he said, "What's with William? What caused this?" And Lisa said, "Oh, it's a genetic mutation." And his first response, "Not our genes."
America's future will be bigger, better, bolder, brighter, happier, stronger, freer, greater, and more united than ever before.
When I was a kid, he did have his charming, caring side, but it was laced with situations where his inner demons would come out.
Demons, according to Fred, that reared their head in childhood and festered over time. In his new book, All in the Family, he delves into the complex dynamic that created an obnoxious, egotistical, and vindictive businessman and, ultimately, president. Is he a product of his family, his upbringing?
Yes. My grandfather was a very driven guy. The word love was not thrown around very often in the Trump household.
He is a chip off the old block. This is
My father, Fred.
right.
My grandfather worked very hard to succeed. He literally came from nothing. And Donald wanted to follow in those footsteps, and he would do whatever it took to get there.
So what then are the Trump family values or priorities?
Money and power. It's about money and power.
But Fred's father and Donald's brother, Fred Jr., shunned those priorities and did something no other Trump dared, walking away from the family real estate business to follow his dream of becoming a pilot.
Dad was definitely the black sheep of the family. And with all the pressures put on him, Dad turned to drinking and was an alcoholic. And that was very embarrassing to my family. And I still think that that's the reason why my sister Mary and me are treated like second-class citizens, if you will, in the family.
Sadly, Fred's father died at the age of 42. But Donald's reaction was less than caring. He rallied his surviving 3 siblings to cut Fred and his sister Mary out of the Trump estate. Are you convinced that Donald was leading the charge with cutting you out of the will?
Absolutely. He was my trustee. He is supposed to make sure that my interests are taken care of. Yet he hatched a plan to steal money from Mary and I.
Despite the legal battle, Donald and his siblings did agree to set up a fund to cover William's medical costs. But Donald Trump still couldn't hide his disdain for his disabled relative. At one point, when William's medical fund was running low, you called your uncle to ask for help. What did he say?
His response was, "He doesn't recognize you, let him die, and move to Florida." To say about your grandnephew is still something I can't understand and maybe don't want to understand. So I just thought about it for a second. I said, "No, Donald, he does recognize me." And that was the end of that conversation.
It's clear Fred has an axe to grind with his uncle, but he insists he's telling his story now, not out of spite, but because America and democracy will suffer should Donald Trump return to the White House. Paint a picture for me of a Trump 2.0 White House. What worries you the most?
I think it's a dangerous dystopian view of this country's future. It's going to get nasty the next 90+ days.
You're fired. Get out of here.
And as you're about to see, the worst may be yet to come.
I mean, I think a second Trump term would be genuinely dangerous, at home and abroad.
When President Donald Trump lost the last US election, the ensuing chaos and violence seemed certain to spell the end of his political career.
We fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to the Capitol.
4 years on, his incredible resurgence as a presidential candidate, despite being a convicted criminal, is unprecedented.
I think we're going to have the greatest election victory in the history of our country.
Just last month, Donald Trump had what looked like a clear path to victory.
With dealing with everything we have to do with...
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
As crazy as it sounds, things got even better for Trump after surviving an assassination attempt at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. But within days, President Biden, replaced by Kamala Harris, instantly upended the campaign.
I think people have not come to grips with how dangerous a Trump second term would be.
Bill Kristol was an advisor in the White House under Presidents Reagan and Bush, a dedicated Republican until Donald Trump showed up. Bill says Trump is clearly rattled by his new rival, former prosecutor and Vice President Kamala Harris, who very quickly amassed millions of dollars for her campaign fight.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
He does not like running against a black woman, and especially perhaps not against a black woman who's poised and impressive and won't at all let herself be bullied by him. I think we've seen that in a couple of recent events where he's kind of lashed out.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
What did you make of his comments that she suddenly turned black? It was a brain snap, wasn't it?
It's truly ludicrous. I worry, though. I'm also thinking, he introduced race into this contest now. And he's also raised the question of her authenticity. Is she the type who pretends to be one thing sometimes and one thing another?
Race was a key issue in the 2020 election. It's shaping up as a key issue in this election.
Yes, you can expect his attacks on her to be quite harsh and nasty.
This is the lunatic that the fake news is trying to build up to be the next Margaret Thatcher.
If anyone knows Donald's vicious side, it's his nephew, Fred Trump III, who was appalled but not surprised by the attack on Kamala Harris's racial background. He's heard much worse at the Trump family home, recalling the time his uncle lashed out when vandals slashed the roof of his precious convertible. You write about witnessing Donald Trump's racist comments when you were quite young.
I was 10 years old, and he was extremely angry. He had a white Eldorado convertible with a black top. He had a roll of black electrical tape in his hand and would put 2 strips about a foot or so long to cover up the slice marks. And he said the N-word twice. He didn't know who did it. He just assumed that it was someone who was black.
It's a disturbing insight into the psyche of a man campaigning for office in a country where race is a defining issue. But Bill Kristol points out, at this point, there's very little that could shock the American public.
If you're for Trump, you say, it's just the way Trump is. The degree of rationalization that's gone on with respect to Trump is pretty extraordinary.
So are we at the point, Bill, where he has said so many outrageous and offensive things that they just don't register, or people aren't shocked?
No, I think that's true to some degree, and I think it's easier to focus on one scandal than on 20 scandals.
The FBI has executed an unprecedented search warrant.
If there are 20, it just becomes, well, that's kind of who he is. So he has affairs with porn stars, and he pays them off, and he's cruel to various groups, and makes fun of a disabled reporter. And at some point, it helps him.
Guilty! Guilty!
Fred Trump has no intention of finding out what Trump 2.0 would look like. Shunning the family brand to campaign and vote for Kamala Harris in the November election. Is it a strange feeling on polling day to be a Trump voting for the other side?
I'm voting for Kamala Harris because they have the policies that I believe in, advocating on behalf of disabled people, which I know the Harris administration will.
And while Fred's public airing of the Trump laundry has incensed Donald's side of the family, Fred's more determined than ever to keep fighting for the rights of vulnerable Americans, like his precious son, William. He wants America to understand who the real Donald Trump is.
He doesn't like to lose, and not to sound trite, but he's the loser for not getting to know William. William inspires so many people, and so many of the disabled who fight every day. Not the fake fight that he talks about, but the real fight. These people are hurting. They don't have a voice. They need to have a voice, and that's what we're going to give them.
Hello, I'm Amelia Adams. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.